am doing one of the things that I really love doing, which is spending time on water. As you can see, I'm on a kayak right in the middle of the open ocean, well, not quite the ocean open, but in the bay of Aeon Bay in one of the Asian islands, and I'm spending some time kayaking around, and these are the things that I really love doing, right? Scuba diving, going on boats, spending time on the beach, doing things that I really love to do, and this video that I'm sharing with you is actually about water. As you can see, I am surrounded by water, a lot of sea water, and it inspired me to actually share this video with you, which is around water. And one of the, not mistakes, but one of the things that I didn't understand about water and electricity and in the elements of student housing and house of multiple occupation. Usually when I used to check to see if a property could produce a good yield, I would do a calculation and therefore contribute to everyone's water, right? I would say every person has 80 Rand water or 100 Rand electricity that I contribute towards their rent as part of my negotiation with them as a landlord of a house of multiple occupation or student housing, where often the landlord prepays rent on behalf of the tenant and it's included in the rental. But what happened is I couldn't understand why the actual amount that I was paying back to the municipality was a lot higher than the portion per person multiplied by the number of people in the house, right? Because you would think that that's what it is. If I've got 8 people in the house and I'm contributing 100 Rand for each person, that would therefore be 800 Rand. But the result didn't come out that way. And I couldn't figure out why until I understood that there are block tariffs for the number of for the amount of water or electricity that you're using, and without understanding this, you could run the risk where you're actually losing a large portion of the profits that you're actually generating. And this video is all about how I calculate it now so that I can be sure of the accuracy of my deals, so that I don't make that same mistake and think that this is a great deal and lose it all. For example, we saw a property a while back where it was 2.3 million purchase price, but it was generating 61,000 Rand rent per month. 2.3 million multiplied by getting 61,000 Rand rent every month. And we couldn't understand why until we realized, we asked the person, how come the water and electricity is so high? They have 21 students with ensuite bathrooms, and they are prepaid water and electricity. So that water was alone costing that landlord between 8,000 and 12,000 Rand a month. That's significant, and electricity was around the same. And that's all because of the escalating exponential increase of the tariff according to the amount of water that you're using. So I hope this next video really gives you insight into that. Enjoy.
So what we're going to be talking about today is the understanding of the water tariffs, and of course the electricity tariffs as well, which will depend on each municipality. So Cape Town, Joburg, Durban, they all have their own tariff system for electricity and water, and I'm wanting just to go into this a bit more so that we can understand how it works, right? Especially with the multi-lets. And what's really happening, and I'm going to talk about it more from water in this perspective, is a property has traditionally one water meter, which is a municipal meter, and of course therefore they bill you once a reading is taken. Let's say how much water you've used in a month, and then according to how much water you've used, they will charge you according to that kiloliter in a certain tariff amount. If you're wondering where you can get that information, well, I have put them all on a link for you. So in the advanced course, I've actually got the electricity and water tariffs here for the at least three major metropoles. So you would just click on it, click on that, and this is going to open up the Cape Town Water and Sanitation Department, and there you can actually see the water tariffs according to the amount of water used. Now this is currently level 3 in Cape Town, and I'm going to choose Cape Town as the example for this exercise, just because it is at the moment the city with the most water, well, with the water crisis, and it really made a massive difference when we had level 6. This is just level 3. And really what it's saying, if you just understand here, it says the first step, which is if a house, or if a house uses between 0 and 6,000 liters or 6 kiloliters, then it will be charged at 17 Rand 15 cents, including VAT, per kiloliter up to 6 kiloliters. Then if you use between 6 and 10.5, then obviously per kiloliter is going to cost more. And as you can see, this just increases and becomes more and more expensive. So for example, if you use 35 or more kiloliters, now for every other kiloliter that you use, you're going to pay 76, which is now at least 3.5 times more expensive than obviously your first kiloliter. Now, just to put this into context, which is at level 6, once you got to, I think it was about 35, you were paying 350 Rand per kiloliter. It was huge. So if you've got multi-lets, you really need to manage your water, because this could totally break you. And of course, then residential sanitation tariffs. So what the councils are also doing is they're saying, well, you're using fresh water, but you're also, for your toilets, it therefore has to be processed, right? And they're therefore charging you as well on the amount of water that you're using, a sanitation tariff. So it's not just the water you're using. There are two bills. There's the amount of water that's come in, and of course, they're also charging you according to the amount of water that you've used as for your sanitation. And as you can see, the same kind of process is there. And this is where these numbers come from. So when we do go to our spreadsheet, which is down here, you can see that this is actually where those numbers that we've just seen in red here, 6, 10.5, 35, this is where those numbers are going to come into play, because you can take them directly from the spreadsheet here, so that obviously when it changes in the water tariff level or the water restrictions, or from year to year, there's always an increase, you can come back and you can change everything in red here yourself. But what I'm wanting to go back to is this scenario here. So for example, let's say that your main municipal meter comes in and then it splits into individual prepaid meters. And in this case, let's say that I've got 3 units. And traditionally in the water tariff, as we have seen, that for the first 6 kiloliters, you'll pay a certain amount. And then if you're between 6 and 15 kiloliters, you'll pay a certain amount. And so it will go up. But the way that they structure the water tariffs for the subunits is that they will take that 6 and they'll divide it by the number of units that you've got. Therefore, the tariff will now no longer be up to 6. It will be up to 2. You will now pay that first bracket step. And then it won't be between 6 and 15. It will now be between 2 and 5, is that you'll pay the second tariff step. So in that way, it means that if, for example, unit C very quickly uses 10 kiloliters and therefore pushes the whole property into a higher tariff, it is still saying that this unit will be at a slightly different tariff level according to its individual use. But of course, now that tariff is a lot less. So even though it seems fairer, in some ways it's not, because obviously the more units you've got, the shorter the tariff brackets are, right? And that's incredibly important to understand, because they're going to start paying a high amount directly from 3 kiloliters as opposed to traditionally from 6 or 7. So this is what it actually looks like if we go back down to our spreadsheets. So if we take here, and I've taken, for example, Cape Town water tariff, as you can see here, we've got Joburg and we've got Durban as well. Joburg's is slightly more complex, and then of course there is Durban here as well. Just taking a look here, you can actually see that here's a mapped graph of the different usage steps. And you can see that obviously as you're moving more and more into these upper brackets, the price per water is a lot more. Cape Town is the same. You can see again here that as soon as you go above 35, it just really starts increasing in its water usage. And of course, Joburg is going to be pretty similar in its bracket, but no doubt you can see Cape Town is accelerating that just because of the crisis that we had. So if we're coming back to the spreadsheet, we're wanting to try and obviously determine the impact and the actual cost of water for a certain number of students or house of multiple occupation people, and also according to the number of units that are there, right? So here in the red, these are the figures that you can change. Number of units, these will be the number of prepaid meters that you've got, number of people in the house. In other words, this is the number of people in the unit that you're wanting to measure, right? Not total, but in that unit. The amount of water per day. So for example, we know that water restrictions at level 3 in Cape Town are 105 liters. we know that water restrictions at level 6 was 50 liters, and I would suggest you're probably looking at about 150, maybe, if it is in a general use. Now, they're actually saying that traditionally in South Africa, on average, it's about 200 to 250 liters per person per day, which is a lot of water. And remember that this is throughout the day, no matter where you are. So it's at home, it's at work, or at university, or wherever you are. They're not just saying this is 105 liters in your house. This is 105 liters everywhere for cooking, washing, eating, drinking, showering, doing your clothes washing. It's everything is this amount of water, right? And I guess the same is for the electricity here, the same kind of thing. And I've got a figure here which I'm suggesting you use, but this will give us a sense of what's going on with the water. So if we just take a look at that, in my case, I've got a property that's got 3 sub-meters, so I'm going to push 3 in there. And I'm wanting to calculate what's the cost going to be if I've got 5 people in that unit, right, in one of those houses. So if I come back to this one here, so let's say I've got 5 people in unit C. And I want to calculate what is my monthly amount of water, or what's my monthly cost, because in this case, remember, I'm prepaying the water and electricity. I therefore buy the tokens and send them that amount. But unfortunately, I don't know how much water I'm buying. I have to actually buy that by a rand amount as opposed to a litre amount. So if I've gone here and I've said 105, now in my units, I say, well, it's 105 for the whole day. So at the house, you should be probably going to be about 80 litres, right? Because that's what I'm looking at. So at 80 litres, this will tell me on average what my cost is going to be. Because let's take a look here. According to the different steps, right, this will be the cost of per water. As you can see here, that it's divided by the number of meters. So 6 divided by the 3 is equal to 2. This always calculated automatically for you, because therefore it says that the first 2 kiloliters is going to cost that much. The next kiloliters will cost that much. And so it's going to pre-calculate it. So here, if we go down and take a look at the water tariffs in Cape Town, it's saying that if we use 80 liters, which is taken from this number up here, and we're saying that 80 times 5, right, because that's how much it's going to be, is going to be 2.4 kiloliters, right, per person. Well, therefore, we know that this is going to be times by 5, 12 kiloliters for that unit in the month. And therefore, that will push it between 10.5 and 35. And this will calculate then that the cost of that water is going to cost about 380 Rand, right? That's the total for that unit. So I would need to just look at that as the amount of water that they're going to use. Now in Cape Town, there's also a fixed charge. In other words, this is regardless of how much water you use, they charge you a fixed amount per household, and that you can actually enter in here, right? So this is the fixed charge, because that also is going to impact your calculation. This therefore calculates the total, and therefore what the cost is per person, because there'll be 5 people, and this is going to be the cost in that house. But remember, this isn't yet the amount of water that you're going to pay for, because there still is the sanitation. So taking into account again that we are using that amount of water by this number of people in 3 sub-meters, it's going to also calculate and say that, well, you've also got a sanitation cost of about 428 Rand, which therefore gives you a cost per person of 85 Rand per person, right? So this spreadsheet will add those two together and therefore give it to you here as water per day per person at 80 liters is going to cost this much in total, right? Which is basically, I now need to go and buy 870 Rand of water, and it will come out to about 174 Rand per person, and that will give someone about 80 liters of water for that month. Now, this doesn't take into account that the prepaid meters also add their 10% service charge on. So you'll probably have to add the 10% onto this 880 Rand, because for their service of doing the tokens, etc., they actually take 10 or 8 to 10%. So in this case, I'd probably have to actually buy 950 Rand of water just for those 5 people in the scenario, right? And this is important because this now means that I have a figure to go on when I'm calculating what my actual expenses are going to be in a property. You know, in our property spreadsheet, we want to say how much water per person Well, this is just going to give you an indication of what that actually looks like, that of how much I'm going to put in. And the same would be for electricity, right? Electricity will be the same thing. It's going to calculate per those water, the tariffs, which you can still find at the website there. And it will also calculate how much it is going to be per person according to that figure, which gives us a fairly accurate amount. If it is, for example, and this is why I'm said it's important for the number of units, is if there was just one, I had one house that had 5 people, you can see that it actually changes this total here, right? Let me do that again. If I just had one unit and it was 1 meter and there were just 5 people in the house, therefore it's actually 122 Rand per person. Because here you can see now the breakdown of the tariff is they will experience the benefit of just the full tariffs in this breakdown according to just 1 meter. But if I put now the 3 meters, as you can see, it's going to actually add up by a significant amount. It's another 50 Rand per person. And of course, if this now jumps up to, let's say you've got 10 people in one house, well, that's 1,400 Rand. But if you have 10 people in just one of your units, its gain is going to significantly jump up and increase, which is why we use this calculator to get an accurate amount of per person. Otherwise, we're going to base our costs on our deals with incorrect data. And that's going to be absolutely essential in figuring that out. So this is really useful for you to determine your costing for your water and electricity. You can change these figures. All of these, obviously, you can change. You can change the fixed charge here. You can change the step, because obviously this is going to change from city to city. And of course from year to year, and hopefully it won't vary so much that it's going to throw all of our formulas out. And as I said, the same is going to be for Durban. It will have different brackets, different amounts. For example, what's interesting is Cape Town has a maximum of 35 kiloliters for sewage that it charges you on. In other words, if you use more than that, well, 35 is the max. Whereas Durban, for example, keeps increasing in sewage the more you use. So again, it's just really, here we go. So it's just really interesting, the different brackets and how it all works. But ideally, we just want to understand that water and electricity is expensive, and we want to have accurate calculations in dealing with that. If it is that you're wanting to change any of the formulas in here or anything, well, of course, you can just go to review. You can go unprotect sheet, and you just type in capital R, capital B. That's for Robin Booth. And that will then allow you to actually go and change or add any kind of things that you're wanting to add. And of course, you do so at your own risk. I cannot vouch for the total accuracy of all these. I mean, I've used this for quite a while now. It's been very useful. It seems to generate a correct outcome. But again, we always, we're wanting this to be a guideline, not to be the inevitable. If I'm just actually looking at this cost here, take a look here, that if you had one house with 21 students, you're going to be paying nearly 12,000 Rand in water. That's a significant amount. I mean, look at that, 577 Rand per person if they're using 250 liters, which is determined the norm, right? And I shared with you that one property that we saw where it was a great deal. I think it was a 1.3 million Rand. Was it 2.3 million Rand home? Yeah, 2.3 million Rand home, but generating 60,000 Rand rent. And it just seemed like a no-brainer. They said there were 21 students in the house, and we thought, yeah, we hit the jackpot. And then we heard that they said their water was between 9 and 15,000 Rand a month. And that is partly because they also had ensuite bathrooms for each room. Well, this is why. Here it is. 12,000 Rand, right? Because of the tariff bracket. This was in Cape Town. We had, let's say there was 1 meter, 21 students with 250, 11,000, 12,000 as well, based on this calculation, right? Because obviously the tariff amounts are going to be pretty similar. But if this starts going into water restriction 6, it's going to be, absolutely, crazy expensive. So if you're considering that a shared room, someone might be paying 2,000 Rand, well, consider that there we just go. You've already just lost 600 Rand plus another 128 in electricity. So call that 700 Rand in just water and electricity. I mean, where's your profit? There is none. You're going to be broke very quickly if you do not know how to manage and calculate calculate your water and electricity correctly. So yeah, I really hope that's been useful. It was an eye-opener to me to actually really start to understand, because of course it doesn't help to have a lot of people. In other words, the main insight for me and takeaway is that we don't want to just cram our units with lots of people, because it actually becomes exponentially unaffordable, because the cost of adding another person to the water and electricity becomes so significant that just that increase of 2,000 Rand and the impact of that in our water and electricity, because it pushes us into a higher bracket, makes it actually not as feasible. So we want to find that sweet spot, right, where what we're charging and what we're having to pay then for electricity and water is appropriate and does not move us into a bracket where it actually becomes incredibly expensive. So yeah, really hope that was useful to you, and good luck. And if you've got any questions, obviously just let me know.